I am very proud to welcome up Party Secretary and your 2019 LRD chairperson who put on this whole shindig, Linda Howell.
Thank you so much. Well, I love a party, and tonight's a great party because you're here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for representing the face of the Fort Bend Republican Party in Fort Bend County. Thank you for being here for our future, and I'm proud of you. Thank you. I'd like to welcome a fellow Republican who has come to Fort Bend County tonight, and we're very excited to honor him and hear from him. He is from Tarrant County. Dr. Shafi will be speaking to us. Please come up. You're welcome to come up on. His resume is so deep and so expansive, I don't think I could really do him the honor of explaining all that he's done in our country, but he is a surgeon. He is a two-term council member from the city of South Lake and vice chairman of the Tarrant County Republican Party. He was born in India and raised in Pakistan and came to the United States in 1990 to pursue his American dream. And we're so proud of him. About that time, he also became a United States citizen and joined the Republican Party. So he's been involved all these years. He is trained in general surgery, trauma surgery, surgical critical care, public health, and business management at some of the best universities in our country. He has attended and studied at Johns Hopkins University, the University of Pennsylvania, and Southern Methodist University. Currently, he is the CEO of a large surgical private practice in Tarrant County. He has published over 110 papers focusing on improving the quality of surgical care in our country and has received numerous grants. He was worked with and recognized under Governor Perry and served on his Trauma and EMS Advisory Council and received the President of the United States Volunteer Service Award. And that's just a few of the things this wonderful man has accomplished. He is no stranger to the Republican Party, and he brings a very unique perspective tonight on why he is involved with the Republican Party. So I hope you'll welcome him, and we're very happy to have you here. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's a great honor for me to be invited to this wonderful get-together, and I want to thank Chairman Jeton for inviting me, and Congressman Pete Wilson, who has served our country for the better part of his entire life. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here today. Over the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to talk to you about two things. I am going to directly address the efforts that were made in Tarrant County to remove me from the party because of my religion. But I'm also going to share some of my thoughts about how do we grow our party for 2020 and beyond. As some of you may know, I was appointed and confirmed by the party, Tarrant County Republican Party, as their vice chair in July of last year. And soon afterwards, a movement was started to remove me from that position because of my religion, because I happen to be a Muslim American. So the last several months were extremely difficult for me and my family because of these efforts by a very small number of our fellow Republicans, especially because we are the party of Lincoln and Reagan. But throughout this ordeal, I remained very optimistic because I have faith in the founding principle of our nation that all men are created equal. Now, unfortunately, religious persecution is not new to our family. In 1947, when the British left India, they divided it into two countries based upon religion. Driven by bigotry, riots broke out on both sides of the newly created border. Over 1 million people were killed in horrendous acts of violence, and another 10 to 15 million people were driven from their homes. That included both my parents' families, who lost everything because they were Muslims. I grew up in Pakistan under a brutal military dictatorship where the press was censored, courts were corrupt, and police was an instrument of oppression, kidnapping, torturing, and killing the very same innocent people that they were supposed to protect. I came to the US in 1990 with very little except a desire to be the best that I could be. And here, me and my family have found freedoms and opportunities that were denied to us back home. So I remain optimistic about our country. When I ran for our city council in South Lake in Tarrant County, many people believed that it was not possible in post 9/11 America for a Muslim to win an election, but I did not believe them. I did not believe them because I believe that in this country it matters not where you're coming from, it only matters where you're going. And on election night, my victory speech consisted of 3 words only. Only in America. So having to deal with this movement to remove me from our party was disappointing, but I did not give up. It would have been easier for me to quit. After all, it's a volunteer position, and the pay is, not that good. But I stayed on, and I stayed on not to retain the title of vice chair. I stayed on to fight for the principle of religious freedom in our country. But during this entire ordeal, I never felt alone. What you did not hear in the press and the mainstream media is the amount of overwhelming, heartwarming support that poured into our home, in my inbox, in my email messages, in my Facebook, Twitter, social media, handwritten notes from school kids supporting me, from grassroots Republicans, from ordinary Americans, and from the leadership of the Republican Party, all the way from the national down to local leaders. And some of my strongest supporters were the veterans of our armed forces and the pastors, because both of whom have dedicated their lives for protecting the freedoms guaranteed by our Constitution. Eventually, by an overwhelming vote, our county Republican Party rejected the motion to remove me, which reaffirmed my faith in our party and our country. It was a shining moment in the history of Republican Party, not just in Tarrant County, but for the entire nation. It is something that we should all be very proud of as Republicans. But it's time to move on. That brings me to the second part of my talk, which is how do we grow our party for 2020 and beyond. The population of Texas has grown about 3 million since 2010. So if we are not growing, we are dying, and we saw the evidence of that in 2018 midterm elections. And to grow, we need to add conservative Americans of all types and not subtract them. But unfortunately, for the last several years, our party has used a variety of litmus tests of purity, and whoever failed a particular test was labeled as rhino or worse. With nearly 400 planks in the platform of Republican Party of Texas, that is a failing strategy. We have created artificial divisions in our country where every group feels under threat by the other. We have created artificial divisions of men versus women, rural versus urban, whites versus non-whites, Christians versus Jews and Muslims, immigrants versus native-borns, straight versus gays, black lives versus blue lives, and we have divided people who work in our fields and factory versus those who work in our offices. But I remain optimistic. I remain optimistic because in the history of our nation, we have overcome divisions far worse than what we are facing today. I remain optimistic because of the sacrifices made by individuals like Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, JFK, and thousands of men and women who rest in Arlington National Cemetery and other national cemeteries around the country, bearing simple marks of a cross, a star, a crescent, or no religious mark at all. I remain optimistic because of African American scientists such as Katherine Johnson, who fought segregation in the 50s to get her college education and then used her education to help launch John Glenn into space and then bring him home safely. I remain optimistic because of Muslim American surgeons such as my good friend Hassan Alam in Michigan, and another immigrant from Pakistan who helped create a revolutionary bandage that instantly stops bleeding when applied to injuries, which has saved the lives of thousands of our civilians, soldiers, and police officers. I remain optimistic because of your own J.J. Watt, who raised over $30 million for victims of Hurricane Harvey. I remain optimistic because of my friend John Pryor, who drove to Ground Zero on 9/11 when everybody was streaming out of New York City. He drove into New York City, made his way to Ground Zero, spent 3 days helping people there, came back to Philadelphia, joined the Army, and on his last tour of duty on Christmas Day 2008, he was killed by enemy fire. I challenge anybody to tell me who among these men and women that I just told you about is not welcome in our party. Americans of all faiths, all races, all ethnicities, all colors have contributed tremendously to our nation. So our message as Republicans should be absolutely clear, unambiguous, unequivocal. We recognize no boundaries of race, ethnicity, religion, caste, creed, color, or sexual orientation. So how do we convince these Americans to join us? We convince them to join us and our party not by trying to convert them to our values, but by helping solve real problems faced by ordinary Americans every day. Our rural communities have been decimated by lack of jobs and a stranglehold of meth and opioid addiction. The American dream of home ownership is now beyond the reach of many families in urban areas. People who do have health insurance cannot buy life-saving medicines because of high prices of prescription drugs. College education has become unaffordable. High-quality K-12 education is not available to many kids in urban areas. Untreated mental health issues have created a self-perpetuating pipeline between homelessness, crimes, and drug addictions. Homeowners especially retirees, are perpetually indebted to the government because of high property taxes. So if we want to grow in 2020 and beyond, we need to offer conservative, market-driven solutions to these problems faced by everyday Americans. But to achieve these, we need leaders. We need leaders with moral courage to make the difficult choices. We need leaders who will unite us and not divide us. We need leaders who will spread hope, not fear. We need leaders who will agree to disagree with others without dehumanizing or demonizing the other. We need leaders who will be firm in our values, but will be willing to negotiate to move our country in the right direction, even if it is 1 yard at a time. Thomas Paine once said, "It is in our power to begin the world over again," and he was talking about the American Revolution. But I will submit to you that it applies to us today as well. So let's create our own rendezvous with destiny in 2020 by inspiring people to join us by the power of our ideas, by the power of our ideals, and the power of a hope for a better future for all of us. I will conclude my comments by sharing my one firm belief with you. I believe that America is the last best hope for mankind. And as guardians of this nation, it is our sacred responsibility to overcome our fears and animosities and learn to trust each other to create a more perfect union of all our people, so our country may remain that shining city upon a hill that Reagan talked about, a beacon of liberty and hope for our children and for millions of people who are oppressed around the world. May God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shafi, for those words of encouragement. Please remain seated while dinner is now served.